Welcome back, everyone. Live from BlizzCon 2018, we continue the semifinals for the Hearthstone Global Games. Coming up next, we have an epic match to see who will be facing off against China. And remember the stakes, over $400,000 in prize money, and the title as the #1 country in Hearthstone for 2018. Without further ado, let's go ahead and meet our next two teams. The first, from South America, please welcome Brazil! Brazil is represented by Race, Perna, Lucas, and Neves. And their opponents on the other side of the world, also from the Southern Hemisphere, please welcome New Zealand. New Zealand is represented by Mage, Jack Attack, Ting Tong, and returning BlizzCon champion, Patra. Who moves on? Who is going to be sent home? The answer is coming up right now. Let's send it over to Derek and Falcone.
Thank you, Frodan. It almost doesn't get better than this. We've got the finals coming up, but only one spot remaining. New Zealand and Brazil. Derek, coming into the Hearthstone Global Games, are these the teams that you expected to make it this far?
I don't think they would have been picked as anyone's favorite to win the tournament, unless you are from Brazil or New Zealand, I would imagine. But I think for me in particular, Brazil is a team that I have had a very vested interest in this year. I've cast all the Copa America tournaments this year, of which we have a champion on the stage in Race. Perna's also been competing at a couple of those as well, not quite able to take the victory. And they have been having a really good year, I think, in Hearthstone, really starting to build up their reputation amongst the South American community, standing up to the likes of Argentina as the real premier South American Hearthstone team. And so I'm really, really happy to see them right here through at the semi-finals of BlizzCon.
Brazil completely undefeated in the Hearthstone Global Games Swiss. They lost one series just before the finals, and obviously they've lost one in the finals, but still, the best record in the first part of the Hearthstone Global Games is nothing to sniff at. Let's take a look at the players representing both of these teams. One more time, Brazil, Race, Perna, Lucas, Neves versus New Zealand, Mage, Jack Attack, Ting Tong, and as Frodan said, defending BlizzCon champion, Patra.
And just a slight correction, they haven't even lost one in the finals so far. They sailed through the top bracket. They've lost one series over the whole months that the Hearthstone Global Games has been going on. So I would be very unsurprised if they make it through to the finals. But looking at the matchups that we have available as we will be getting the picks and bans up on screen, it looks like New Zealand have come out a little bit ahead, in my opinion. It's kind of close, but most of the matchups I would like on the side of New Zealand.
Yep, and actually having just spoken to the players a little bit myself, they completely agree with you. Last time we cast, it was New Zealand. And if you'll recall, I said that Jack Attack came over and said, we won the pick order, we'll win. Well, he basically said the exact same thing again, in the exact same fashion. Walked past, said it, and walked away. He's a very confident man.
As he should be. He's through to the semi-finals. You don't get there without believing in yourself, which I think is part of New Zealand's strength. Maybe at the start they were afraid of some of the Titan teams like Norway at the start, France, Germany, whoever thought might be getting through to the finals, but now they are the players who have made it. And if they keep playing the way they've been playing so far, I think they're really in a good spot. They seem to be coming together very well as a team. Even though individually, some of the members don't have too many tournament results. We obviously know Mage's HCT performance, Jack Attack's tour stop victory are the real premier results to their name. But when they work together, they seem to have just a really strong synergy as a team.
They do. I was talking to Patra last night. Her and Ting Tong are the only remaining members of this team from last year.
Yeah.
And she was saying the synergy this year is just very good. They work well together. They've all got different specialties. But let's take a look at the final pick order for this series. The order in which the games will be played. First up, Race is going to be playing his Odd Quest Warrior versus New Zealand on the Even Warlock. And now, Derek, Odd Quest Warrior is one of these decks that definitely I wouldn't consider the most popular. Odd Warrior has been making the rounds for quite a few months now, but the Quest iteration, what do you think the reasoning behind that is?
So the thing behind this is primarily to give you an edge in the mirror. I think any kind of these matchups that go super long. I remember the biggest exposure I've had to Odd Quest Warrior recently was Zalay has actually been playing quite a lot of this on stream. He hasn't so much in the last couple of weeks, but there was a big period where he was playing a whole bunch of Odd Quest Warrior because the general thinking was, against the aggression, you've still got the hero power. The job is kind of done against aggro, Odd Rogue, Odd Paladin, whatever you want. You're just going to be outvaluing them with your removal and your hero power. But against the control decks, let's get that hero power going. In the late game, we don't care about gaining more armor. We just want to start killing our opponent with the Ragnaros hero power. And up against the Even Warlock from New Zealand, which is going to be the first game, I am very interested to see how that will come into effect, because you definitely get some advantages of just being able to go aggressive in the late game. Even Warlock is likely to be on quite a low health total, but you also get some downsides of losing some of the good cards in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, there's no execute, for example, which would be great at dealing with giants. You have both of the limitations being odd and having to run all of these taunts. Having spoken to the players, they believe that the Even Warlock is a slight favorite here.
I would agree. I think that's generally how it works, whether you're Odd Quest Warrior or just regular Odd Warrior. As you just generally don't have enough. Well, first of all, you can just not hit the removal you need at the start of the game. If they stick a Mountain Giant, Twilight Drake, you just get beat down. That's sometimes how you can lose. But also I find the sustainability of Even Warlock, there's just enough threats to get the job done, especially when you throw Gul'dan into the mix, which I imagine New Zealand will be very, very anxious to find.
I have to say, we've had some really exciting series so far in the Hearthstone Global Games Finals, both yesterday and today. The first series of the day, that Sottle and Raven, we just finished casting, Norway versus China. I could not believe what I was watching through most of that series. That was some incredible Hearthstone being played. Yeah,
as you would definitely expect from both of those teams. We were talking to Admirable in the crowd, actually, about as he's also
Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora.
The Admiral himself, exactly, about the play from China. And I totally agree with him. China, although they haven't had the best year individually in the HCT circuit, as a team, something just clicks. The way they work together, putting their minds together, maybe the fact that they're not alone on stage up there, it just works for them. And I hope we get to see the same thing from New Zealand here.
I think it's a very different style. I think all of the members of Team New Zealand, they have their very distinct personalities. Ting Tong is the meme player, as they'll all agree. He plays the fun decks. Yeah. He brings something a little bit quirky to the team. Jack Attack is the confident one. Like you said, he has a tour stop victory. Yeah. He's got every reason to be. Mage is the quiet one. He just sort of lurks in the background, but he is one of the best Hearthstone players on the team and in the world, I think it's safe to say. And I think Pathra sort of keeps everyone together.
And I want to say also, because I like the point you're bringing up, as you know, we're kind of glossing over these early turns, nothing too important happening. For Ting Tong being the kind of meme player, that's not a slight to him at all.
No,
you get some players who are incredibly strong tournament players. Like the biggest one that springs to mind for me is Tice. We know that he is an incredibly strong Hearthstone player, but almost due to the fact that on stream he plays these slightly weird off-meta decks to entertain a very large audience, it gives him just a better understanding of matchups that most people wouldn't know how to play.
Yeah, I mean, similar thing can be said about Jackie Chan.
Sure.
He even has been known to bring some quirky decks to some major tournaments and win them.
Oh, yeah.
So there's definitely something to be said there. And again, in something like the Hearthstone Global Games, in a format where you can bring these minds together, these different strategies together, you can really make some magic.
The wild card element.
Right.
As this game is just starting to get rolling now after the ceremonial pressing of the hero powers to get things rolling, Patra will be able to start throwing down these threats. And this is a pretty big facet of Even Warlock play.
Giant or Drake?
Giant or Drake, the classic question. Do you go for the higher immediate pressure play of Mountain Giant? Or do you try and bait out the premium removal in the form of Shield Slam, obviously primarily, and then follow up with the Mountain Giant? And I think it's becoming increasingly clear that against the control-ish decks that have a lot of answers, you go Drake first, try and bait out the removal, and then you follow up with Giant.
Yep, that does seem to be the way things are run here. Skulking Geist is very important when it comes to Giants as well. Obviously, Skulking Geist ripping out the shield slams from the deck can be a factor. It can be a reason to hold back on those Mountain Giants. But there's no Skulking Geist found in the hand just yet by Patra. She's going to have to dig for that one.
Not really much good removal at all for Race coming down here, though, with or without the Skulking Geist being found. No Super Collider, Brawl, Reckless Flurry, any of the premium ways to clear off the board, which means unless they're able to get a very strong foothold onto this board in the form of Dynamatic and Zilliax, I suppose, primarily, they are going to be struggling to fight back against the aggression that Patra will inevitably throw down.
Razor's a pretty good defense up at the moment, though. Patra's not going to be pushing through too much damage immediately.
Yes.
I think he just has to slam down a Giant this turn, just to amp up this pressure. The longer the game goes on, the more defenses the Warrior gets, and the less effective these Giants get.
Yeah, they can start to be worrying about things like Brawl, especially as the rest of their hand is fairly underwhelming. And also the fear of Hero Power into Reckless Flurry, which does look like it's leading for New Zealand to go with the Spellbreaker instead. This does give them the possibility for double Giant next turn.
True.
Which has its positives and negatives. It's very weak to Super Collider unless they're positioning their minions correctly.
Oh no, they can't go double Giant next turn because the first one.
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. But even so, holding these threats back, saying this is a good enough of a threat. And I think if their hand had cards like Hooked Reaver, Lich King in hand, they would be much more willing to start throwing out these threats. But this clearly indicates from New Zealand they want to take this game a little bit further into the later stages of the game, which, again, has its positives and it has its negatives. You are not going to be winning in fatigue because New Zealand has been pretty consistently tapping in this matchup to draw themselves further to the deck. So they're going to have to do something. They are undeniably the aggressors.
But for now, Ray's able to continue to play quite a defensive game, putting down another Taunt minion. That Twilight Drake is going to struggle to hit the face this turn. It is going to be all about the timing on the Giants, I think, and just how much work that Super Collider can do. That's why playing against Odd Warrior is so difficult. Playing around Brawl, Shield Slam, and Super Collider all at the same time is just impossible.
Yeah. I'm with, this is what I remember Sayan was saying on the recent Watchstone of just, Super Collider is just the most infuriating card. Just trying to play around that card is impossible. The fact that it flew so well under the radar for most players during the card reviews is quite staggering.
It has a great animation and sound effect, though.
It does have a great animation and sound effect, but why doesn't the hammer go both ways if it's swinging a different way? Like,
well, it does have a bit of a turn. Like, I think there's a slight alteration, but no.
Not good enough for me.
Almost out of time.
Yep. Well, New Zealand eventually deciding, yep, it is time to slam down one of these Giants. Gotta start dealing that damage somehow. This is interesting play into the Super Collider, though. I'm wondering about the positioning, I guess.
Well, it means they don't have to taunt up their Giant as well, which they don't want to do because they want that as the kind of the battering ram just protected so it can smack into the face and start removing that health total as much as they possibly can. And like, you know, it's kind of better if it hits the Giant than the...
Well, yeah, if the Super Collider hits the Giant, it doesn't get killed this turn. If it hits the Sun Fury, then sure it dies, but the Giant's still there. I guess this means that every scenario is fine.
Yeah. And the other big threats being picked up of Patra does now mean I like the use of the Mountain Giant. I'm still not even convinced that it was right to go for the Spellbreaker on turn 4 anyway instead of the Giant. Like, it is just good to get that card rolling a little bit earlier, especially when it's not so weak to to the Super Collider, sorry. They've shown they maybe don't have a Shield Slam as well. But I do like now starting to actually get the threats out of hand.
Probably worth pointing out, that quest is getting closer and closer. I think it's on 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which could just be a pretty quick turnaround. for Race, because this is, although this is Odd Quest Warrior, it still harkens back pretty heavily to the traditional play with Odd Quest Warrior, any kind of warrior that runs the quest, where if you haven't used your removal early, you have the benefit of being able to use your removal to line up the hero power to go face after you've removed all the minions every turn. Super Collider is going to do a fantastic job of that, I would imagine.
That's something New Zealand and Patra are going to have to think about every single turn. They have to consider that the Super Collider is there. They don't have any... Oh, no, well, they have the Ooze on the far left. So I guess on the plus side, if the Super Collider does come down, it's only going to deal the damage once. Wow, look at that. Oh. That is the most aggressive turn they could have made this turn.
Yeah, that is a weird play, because this plays really badly into Dynamatic. It plays pretty poorly into Shield Slam as well, because Hero Power Shield Slam still takes it out. Like, they can follow up with Lich King on the following turn, which I guess is their thinking of why they don't mind too much if this minion is removed. But is getting that 8 damage through to face really how they're winning this game? Isn't it by building up a board and slowly running their opponent out of removal?
So what's the worst case here? Probably just Dynamatic, right?
Yeah.
And then play the Lich King. Then a second Dynamatic is really bad. Shield Slam is really bad because if Dynamatic's being played, Tank Up is being played with it, which means next turn there'll be 8 armor. I've got to agree with you, Derek. I'm struggling to see the logic with this one.
And, well, I suppose that if we actually look objectively at how the other plays would have shaped out, it probably ends up with having to play a giant next to your other giant, which is the last thing you want to do in this matchup because of the power of Super Collider just completely neutralizing 2 of your biggest threats. So maybe due to the positioning, they thought this was just the only way they leave themselves invulnerable to Super Collider. Because again, this is what it's like to play against Odd Warrior. You just have to pick your poison. Are we weak to Brawl, or are we weak to Super Collider, or Dynamatic, or Shield Slam, or Mind Control Tech? You can't play around everything at once. And while this played very poorly around Dynamatic and Shield Slam, it had the obvious benefit of getting 8 damage through to face, which is not insequential. It's pretty important.
Yeah. Giant Reaver is okay here. It wouldn't just outright lose to the Super Collider because the Dynamatic would have to trade in as well, but it's still quite weak to it.
It's pretty bad.
So Super Collider gets played, then the Dynamatic trades in.
Yeah.
Patra can start next turn by playing the Ooze. It does still leave New Zealand ahead on the board, even if there is a Super Collider. I guess that is the thinking behind this one.
Yeah. And again, you know, we're in the mindset, I suppose, where we have Cast Division. We can see they do have Super Collider, whereas from Patra's side, if you ignore Race's hand, if they don't have Super Collider, this is looking great.
That's true, but they have been playing around it so far, and it comes to a point where if you play around it for so long, you have to expect that it's just there.
So maybe going for a play earlier that kind of baits out the Super Collider, and then they can go for the Ooze, because, you know, obviously they have the Ooze to stop any later hits, but if this was just a 5-mana card that dealt with both of these minions, Race would still be happy. It's done the work it needs to do here, and put Race pretty firmly in the lead.
But again, the Ooze plus a 6-drop just looks fine for this turn. It does put Patra slightly ahead on the board.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe they go for Lich King instead, because it's obviously a singular minion.
Ah, that's true.
So the Dynamatic doesn't matter, and then next turn they can go, you know, 2-drop, 2-drop, 6-drop.
Yep. Yeah, I like that.
Just because there's very little that Lich King is weak to on this turn. Brazil are not running BGH. Yeah, I think this is the way to go.
Shield Slam doesn't deal with it yet. Is there a Faceless in the Odd Warrior?
I don't think so. Like, all the kind of weird tech tertiary cards have just fallen by the wayside here, because they need to find room for, you know, the Tar Creepers, Phantom Militias, Blackwalled Pixie, like you see there as well, to get a little bit more value from the Ragnaros hero power. That's
quest complete, though.
That's it.
For Brazil. So that Blackwalled Pixie is actually looking very strong. New Zealand down to 13 health.
And they're just going for it right now, destroying their own weapon.
So we said there was no way to deal with the Lich King this turn, but that's going to do it. As 5 damage goes straight into the dome. Brazil get to use their hero power twice next turn. I don't know how New Zealand get out of this one. I guess they could double Spellstone and heal for 14, but that only stalls the inevitable.
Yeah, that feels really, really bad. They have to start getting these minions on the board and hope to find Gul'dan as quick as possible, because As soon as the warrior hero power starts hitting any of your minions, the Gul'dan lifesteal hero power quickly starts to catch up. The swing that you gain is not that much worse than just 8 random damage.
Yeah, gonna have to Spellstone just to restore enough health. But again, we are gonna get 2 procs of that hero power this turn. So Brazil, they've got a very strong chance of just outright winning the game this turn. If they use the Saronite to trade away the Acidic Swamp Ooze, and then the hero power goes face twice, that's a victory. The downside is if it hits the Twilight Drake once, the Drake survives, and then can value trade the Stonehill Defender. So there's a lot to think about here.
So, I mean, they can quite happily start with the first hero power. After, I imagine, yes, they trade in the Saronite Chain Gang into the Ooze. Hero power, if it hits face, they can just go for the chance to get the lethal if they want to. Or if it hits the Twilight Drake, probably just quite happily follow up with the Direhorn Hatchling.
I wonder.
Yeah, that seems good. Oh, it's gone face, though. Race. Brazil are definitely going to want to take this 50-50 now, I should imagine.
Oh, and it's not just the fact that it's for Brazil, it's for Race. His Odd Warrior, his Quest Warrior played for the longest time.
That's
let him down, but there it is.
Race, Team Brazil take the first win in what they considered, and we considered, an unfavorable matchup. New Zealand were feeling good about this series, but now they might start to worry a little.
Yeah, that is such an important win for Brazil. Like you said, the fact that it was probably a slightly unfavorable matchup, but I have to question some of New Zealand's plays. I don't at all say they're wrong because there was, again, so much to consider playing around. But I do wonder if in the early turns, they should have just kind of closed their eyes a little bit to some of the threats and just played their better cards, because in the early turns, they were, you know, not playing Mountain Giant for a while. They were messing around with some of their weaker cards, and they ended up playing them later on anyway, and they were met with the answers that little bit later on and didn't get any damage through to face.
Well, the score is currently 1-0. Brazil looking very good, trying to earn their place in the finals against China. In a few moments, we'll be back with more Hearthstone Global Games.
Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. New for the second season, we're proud to introduce HGG Cheer. Cheering is a way to show support for players and regions while boosting your presence in chat using bits, a virtual good you can buy on Twitch. Along the way, you'll unlock Hearthstone packs, new Twitch emotes, and a unique card back, while the players earn a share of the revenue. We'll see you in the tavern.
In the Overwatch League, you're hyping up the chat, taking your team to hashtag trending, and spreading memes at tracer level speed.
All while watching us cap the point.
Speed like that deserves a network that can keep up. With T-Mobile, get all the Overwatch League you can handle with coast-to-coast coverage. Now your arena is where you make it.
The 2018 Hearthstone Global Games are brought to you in part by Republic of Gamers, Corsair, T-Mobile, Samsung SSD, and NVIDIA.
Welcome back to Brazil versus New Zealand here at the Hearthstone Global Games Finals live at BlizzCon, where the score is currently 1-0. Brazil having just won an unfavorable matchup against New Zealand, making them look a lot better for the rest of this series.
They're looking an awful lot better going into the next couple of games. Maybe immediately they got a couple of hard matchups in the form of the Death Rattle Hunter versus Control Priest, but I think the one time we've seen that matchup here at the Hearthstone Global Games Finals, it went in favor of the Hunter. If you can get off that early aggression, or if you just run them out of Psychic Screams, as we saw, where Singapore I think played 4 Psychic Screams but still ended up losing to the pressure from the Death Rattle Hunter, Brazil should be in a good spot. And what a feeling that must be. Having only lost 1 game so far, 1 series in the Hearthstone Global Games, they are potentially just going to be going on one of the hottest streaks ever through to the finals.
I did have a bit of a chat with Team Brazil about this coming matchup, the Death Rattle Hunter versus the Control Priest. And they kind of said what I had suspected yesterday, that it really comes down to when Deathstalker Rexar is drawn, in their opinion. If they can get that down early, it doesn't matter how many Psychic Screams the Priest has. They also said it was very important to draw the eggs early, get those procs, and get the aggression started. So, and as you said, we saw yesterday the Death Rattle Hunter won this matchup. It definitely can go either way. Some of the members of Brazil were saying it's Death Rattle Hunter favored. Other members were saying, no, it's literally a 50-50.
I can see it being close. I mean, there are just so many things working in the favor of both teams. When you first look at this matchup, you would imagine that Death Rattle Hunter should just run away with it. The Control Priest is slower, they don't have that much removal early on, but somehow they just manage to dominate the board. They can steal the minions with Twilight Acolyte and Cabal Shadow Priest, all these tricksy Priest plays that somehow pull things back. And then the big trigger they can just pull of Psychic Scream to reset the board at any time really does mean that Brazil is going to be afraid to make their most powerful plays, lest they just have it all Psychic Screamed back into their deck.
Right, it's weird because, as you say, on paper, it's an anti-control deck versus a control deck. The outcome should be obvious, but it really isn't that simple. Skulking Geist, definitely one of the key cards for the Priest in this matchup, picked up there in the mulligan. That's going to be very good for Jack Attack.
Yeah, just a nice way to actually start locking down board control. After you've destroyed the Hunter's Marks, all of a sudden your Primordial Drakes, Twilight Drakes really start applying that little bit of pressure. Because like we saw yesterday, the Control Priest can't go on forever. It can't just remove for the whole game. They do eventually need to start dominating the board, which is exactly what they're going to be looking to do with this pretty nice early curve for the Priest. With this very nice starting curve for the Priest.
Someone injured?
Yeah, it doesn't get all that much better than this. Northshire Cleric on 1, just like good old Mana Worm on 1, which, well, we're not going to experience that one again.
Yeah. Dream a dream of days gone by.
The Death Rattle Hunter, on the other hand, doesn't have much going for them at all yet. No Rexar picked up, but more importantly, no eggs. No cheap activators for the eggs either. They can't really get any of this aggression going.
This hand sucks.
Yep, that is a much more succinct way of saying that.
A succinct way of putting it, yeah.
Got to do 1 in the finals.
Now, the use of the Power Shield is interesting here for New Zealand. They could go for it right now. If they're planning on going Coin Twilight Drake, they want to make their Northshire Cleric resistant to 3/3s now, because they're very likely to see either Mind Control Tech, Terrascale Stalker, one of the 3/3s, Gluttonous Ooze thrown down next turn. So going Power Word Shield here, Coin Twilight Drake is a consideration, I suppose. But in the end, they're thinking, you know, I only end up with, I think, a 4/5 in that scenario off the Twilight Drake. They're going to go with the Acolyte of Pain instead, which I guess in its own way is still pretty strong against the 3/3s that could be played by the Hunter.
Engaging TC-130, mental dislocator.
I'm wondering though, like, do you think Twilight Acolyte just gets slammed here? So that, okay, never mind.
I think I like the draw option here. You just draw 2 cards right away. Twilight Drake is such a perfect follow-up. And it's not like they this is some surprise outcome of their play. This, I think, is exactly what New Zealand will have envisaged. It would have been either egg could have come down, at which point they could just attack and heal the egg to draw a card, or a spider bomb or a 3-3 is played. Either way, they end up drawing a whole bunch of cards leading into Twilight Drake. This was pretty much every eventuality covered very nicely here by New Zealand.
Means the North Shire Cleric does get finished off next turn, but it's done its job.
Yeah.
And actually, it's still very awkward for Perna to deal with the Acolyte of Pain. Spider Bomb doesn't have a play dead to go with it, so it's not like Brazil can just kill it for free. New Zealand are going to be drawing more cards.
And this is exactly what the Priest wants to be doing. This is what we didn't see from Singapore's game in this matchup on the first day of the Global Games Finals, because they just had answers. They had way too many answers. They didn't draw the meat of their deck to actually start dominating the board, which is what Jack Attack is going to be trying to do here. Does have to be afraid of that Spider Bomb, but hey, maybe we can just see a Cabal Shadow Priest to steal it on the turn it's played. There's a lot of counterplay that Jack Attack can do here once again to start stealing the board.
Got to target that face with a flanking strike.
Oh man, that would be one hell of a card.
Actually gonna deal with the Acolyte, just allow New Zealand 2 draws and prevent this from getting even further out of control. There's not too many punishes available for New Zealand with this Cleric.
Yeah, what do? The way that this North Shire Cleric goes insane with card draw is Wild Pyromancer, which would have done the same thing with the Acolyte of Pain anyway, and better, because you don't even have to heal at that point.
I mean, a second power would shield, I guess, would be pretty good for Jack Attack here. You could shield it, heal it. But it looks like he's just looking at the Duskbreaker play this turn. Well, Twilight Drake actually doesn't seem too bad. I think Duskbreaker is slightly better because of all of the removal that Brazil has, the Spider Bombs, the Hunter's Mark, Candle Shots, etc. So putting a big minion on the board whilst not clearing Brazil's board is somewhat risky.
That's kind of true. I don't know. I think a lot of the standard plays that come down on the next turn, Duskbreaker's pretty weak to. Like, I suppose Witchwood Grizzly, if they play that, fine, you're not too sad. But Carnivorous Cube isn't ridiculous to expect. Flanking Strike, Zilliax. There's quite a lot of plays that line up very nicely against the Duskbreaker. And I understand what you mean if you want to play Duskbreaker before the egg comes down. But I was looking at Twilight Drake on that turn, again, just to start dominating the board.
Brazil had also just played a flanking strike, so it probably wasn't the top consideration from New Zealand. But either way, this board is now smaller than the board that was the previous turn. So if this Twilight Drake does get dealt with easily, it's not quite as bad.
Yeah, but they would have traded the North Shire Cleric into the Mind Control tech, so it would have been the same size board as last turn, but whatever, it works out much the same for them anyway. However, they are that one turn closer to Katharina, because that is the way that Perna is really going to start wrestling this board back. Obviously, now also with the ability, because they're at 6 mana, to go Spider Bomb Terrascale, which wouldn't have been available for Brazil on the previous turn. I don't know, I just like developing the bigger minions that little bit earlier in this matchup.
But having now eventually developed this Twilight Drake, Brazil have to ask themselves, what do we do about it? They do actually have the Spider Bomb Terrascale Stalker available to them now, which would not have been available to them last turn, which does just confirm your point. And I'm struggling to find a reason not to make that play, honestly.
Well, the reason not to make that play is Cabal Shadow Priest, which I think is really what they're afraid of. Otherwise, I agree, you would absolutely just completely slam the Spider Bomb Terrascale.
Are they that afraid of the Spider Bomb being stolen?
Yes, I think so. Like, their hand really starts to fall apart then, because if they go Spider Bomb, then there's a Terrascale on the board, it just trades into it. Everything just really starts to fall apart. So I think given how many cards your opponent has drawn, you do actually need to be a lot more careful and start playing around quite a lot of stuff.
It was also really good timing on the Hunter's Mark to play just before the turn 6 play.
Oh, also a good point. Also a good point.
Truth is found in death.
So I think all things considered, that was probably the way to go for Perna, because it's not like Spider Bomb Terrascale Stalker is going to get worse. It's still just a very powerful play.
Now, Brazil needs to break that cube open before turn 9. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. Terrascale Stalker is available to the next turn. New Zealand might actually feel like they have to play Psychic Scream here.
I don't think it's too urgent. The minion that's inside the cube doesn't have charge, unlike the...
So they can just Psychic Scream after.
Exactly, yeah. Their opponent goes Terror Scale next turn, they shuffle beasts back into the deck. It's kind of good for them if their opponent is drawing Witchwood Grizzlies, because their opponent plays a 5-mana 3/3, and they're very happy. And
actually, Jack Attack is going to want the biggest Psychic Screams possible at the moment, because Deathstalker Rexar hasn't been played yet, which means it hasn't been drawn yet. And as long as Rexar's not drawn, Brazil's game is very slow. Going to just set up for the 2-turn steal on the cube by the looks of it.
Yeah, and I think this is a really heads-up spot for New Zealand as well. Going for the Mind Blast there, they're realizing if they keep board next turn, if they don't have to Psychic Scream because of the fact that they're so ahead on board, they can make plays like this where they just trade. They make very, very heavy value trades, and then they go Alexstrasza on 9, hit their opponent for 4, 6, 8 damage, whatever they have on the board, double Mind Blast to close out the game.
Okay, what do we think of Mossy Horror here? Because that Twilight Acolyte will only have been played for one reason, right? To set up for the Cabal Shadow Priest.
Yeah.
If Brazil play the Mossy Horror, yes, it doesn't deal with any of New Zealand's minions, but it does break out their own Witchwood Grizzlies and prevent the Cabal Shadow Priest.
It's a very cute play.
It is cute. Alternatively, Perna can just play the Terror Skull Stalker and think maybe the Cabal Shadow Priest isn't there.
Yeah. Because at the moment for Perna, if that's stolen, the game is just over pretty much.
Right. That's what I mean. And the only way to actually prevent that is to blow it up.
I like it. I think you just have to hope there's no Psychic Scream somehow. And Brazil realized that as well. I think this is a really good spot. But you just have to hope that the Psychic Scream isn't there.
Though, as we can all see, the Psychic Scream is there. So, okay, there are still good cards Brazil can draw. Again, in addition to Rexar, there is the Katharina. There's all of the big old beasts that aren't Witchwood Grizzlies. So, it does leave Perna in that position where he does need to rely on the top of his deck, though.
I wonder.
Wait, what? Hang on. You're going to Cabal the Mossy Horror?
Yeah, I mean, they're thinking about it, and I honestly don't hate looking at alternate lines of play here, because Psychic Scream is when something goes really, really, really wrong. When you want to save that for the situation where you can't really win. As soon as you have any like kind of backup lines of play you can go for that maybe lead into an Alexstrasza, I can respect the thinking.
And maybe that was the issue with yesterday's play, actually, is that Psychic Screams were used willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Whereas Jack Attack is really holding back here. And I agree, it's looking like it might pay off.
And I think this is probably a good spot, because I say you want to save Psychic Scream for the worst possible scenario. What is that worst possible scenario? And I think what it likely is if Jack Attack were to play Psychic Scream this turn, and he's met with Katharina just straight up on the next turn, and he doesn't have a Psychic Scream, that's when things start to go really quite badly, actually. He doesn't have a good answer to it. He doesn't have Anduin to fight back. He'd just have to start going Alexstrasza to face, Mind Blast to face, at which point he might just be dying to a King Crush.
Perna's hand is just starting to look so dry. Like Egg Terror Scale, that's great, but that's like the final push. And then if there is a Psychic Scream, game over.
That's it. And it's not like Perna, like we've seen from some players, kept a bunch of mediocre cards that maybe will be good. They threw away double Terror Scale Stalker just to look for Egg, to look for Keleseth, Katharina, Deathstalker Rexar as well. They went very heavily for the good cards in this matchup, but unfortunately they just didn't find them in time. Because even as they start to finally wrestle back the board, we can see there's still myriad ways for Jack Attack to deal with this board. We could just see trade into Duskbreaker. Does a pretty good job of clearing off this board.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, Psychic Scream looks fine. There's one card in Brazil's hand. Deathstalker Rexar still hasn't been played. Do you think it's still too risky to play it?
I just think that New Zealand are in such a good spot that they need to think, what do we possibly lose to? And I think what they possibly lose to is Psychic Scream into exactly Katharina from their opponent.
Okay.
And if they go double trade into one of the Grizzlies, Duskbreaker, That leaves only a 3-5 on the board. The Spider Bomb very likely clears off something not too important. Like there's a 2-1 Mossy Horror on board.
Yeah, it'll clear off the Mossy Horror or the Dustbreak.
Which is fine, and then you just go Twilight Drake and you have a good board.
Yeah.
I really like this.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, this just leaves New Zealand with an even better board. It clears off the Dustbreaker. That's one of the better targets. For New Zealand, I mean. One of the worst targets for the Spider Bomb.
Yeah, I guess this is better. I was still looking at going for the Twilight Drake just because it has a higher health total and is more likely to survive to attack through to face on the following turn. But with the pickup of Deathstalker Rexar, that all of a sudden means that Jack Attack's win condition of going Alexstrasza through to the face with a couple of Mind Blasts isn't necessarily going to work anymore. Lifesteal Beasts can come down, Life Drinker, Tundra Rhino for that little bit of extra attack. This could be a very interesting game from here.
Yeah, I mean, let the game begin. A hero has been played. New Zealand still hasn't drawn their hero card, Shadow Reaper Anduin. The sooner they get that, the better, given how close they were just to winning the game.
Bloatbat is presented there for Perna, which traditionally against a deck like Priest, which I guess isn't going to have too much presence on board, isn't that impactful. But if you get yourself Lifesteal in combination with that Bloatbat, or maybe a Poisonous effect, that could be the way to steal back the board that Brazil is looking for. And this is a tough choice for them.
They went
with the Lifesteal. Yeah. I like this a lot. That's like, New Zealand can't afford, or they basically won't be playing around Lifesteal Bloatbat. Like the amount of life gain that comes with that, they won't be considering in their calculations.
Do you think this turn is the Alexstrasza turn from Jack Attack then?
Well, it's that, or you develop more minions with Twilight Drake, which has its merits. But you've seen a Spider Bomb, you've destroyed all the Hunter's Marks. It's a very, very good chance that there is just no answer.
The Bloatbat doesn't actually deal with the Alexstrasza, though. Yes, it does heal them a little bit.
Yeah.
But Brazil are going to want to find something to combo it with. Direwolf Alpha doesn't quite make the difference. But yeah, that can be played with the Tunneler, with the, what's it called?
The Vile Brood Skitterer.
Skitterer, not Tunneler, yeah, that's the one. But there you go. That is the clear on the Alexstrasza. Jack Attack doesn't have lethal just yet.
So it's very important, as he is 5 damage off lethal now with the Holy Fire double Mind Blast, and that does mean that Perna is going to have to be healing up every single turn. Thankfully, though, he has a fantastic hand with which to heal.
Again, though, the Zombies isn't... okay. I was going to say the Zombies isn't quite powerful enough to deal with the Twilight Drake, but New Zealand are playing more minions, which makes the Bloatbat better.
Yeah. So the Bloatbat is a 3/4. Right, so it would have to attack into the... Yes, it would have to attack into the Twilight Drake in order to actually die and get the effect.
But that's fine.
Man, is that good. Killing off both the other minions as well, healing up for 3 and then 6, the 9 altogether.
Definitely puts Perna out of range one more time. He's even got Ziliax to follow up with next turn to heal for even more and deal with another minion. And Brazil can fit in hero power this turn.
Yeah, I think they're looking at a Devilsaur Egg because it's buffed up.
Oh, I forgot about that, yeah. Back up to 24. New Zealand's certainly not quite got 20 damage available. They're not too far up. They got 14.
Getting closer, but not quite there yet. And this is the point where Perna, if he gets any kind of reasonable zombies, Jack Attack might actually just need to find find Anduin himself in order to get that chip damage through to face. Ooh.
Spider Bomb is not bad, but no way of activating it this turn. Well, actually, Ziliax.
No death rattles at all.
Spider Bomb, Ziliax is magnetic.
Oh, yeah.
It will have Divine Shield, so it won't die, but...
That's not a good combo. Just heal up for more.
It's still a lot of healing, yeah.
That's like 7 healing then, plus the 7 you probably get next turn as well.
Exactly.
Whew.
It's got to be worth thinking about. Although people often forget that Spider Bomb has magnetic, and I mean Ziliax also has magnetic, but...
And it's good to play the Ziliax first, because then if they get silenced, you get a 3-2 instead of a 2-2. It probably doesn't matter. But
they're doing it!
Lovely play here.
Oh, this is just fantastic. Clearing off the Primordial Drake thanks to the buffs on the Kelleser.
And it's somehow falling out of New Zealand's favor. The ridiculous amount of heal available to Brazil is pulling them back in this game. They're just going to have to find something pretty impressive soon, because now Perna doesn't need anything specific off of the Zombies. He just needs stuff. He just needs to be able to play anything onto the board, and unless a Anduin can come down right now, there just won't be the damage to win the game, and there won't be the board presence to win the game either. This game has turned around an unbelievable degree.
Right. It looked like Brazil had no hope. They had a single card in their hand and no board. New Zealand's hand was full, but Deathstalker Rexar, that is what this card does. It's not what it used to do. Deathstalker Rexar used to be one of the weakest cards when it was first released in Knights of the Frozen Throne. The Hunter decks it was in, it had the lowest win rate. But nowadays, with these newer beasts, with all the lifesteal and all the rush.
Like the 1-mana 2/2 jeweled Macaw.
Right.
That actually costs 3 mana. Yeah, it really has just proven to be such a cornerstone of any strategy of Hunter at the moment. No matter what you're playing, apart from Odd Hunter, I guess, you play 29 cards plus Rexar.
It's still important for Perna, though, to be drawing, or to be getting these as good a builder beast as possible.
Yeah.
Every single turn.
Needs to be worrying not one bit about fatigue. Wrapped Hatchling is not necessary. He may very well just take it because it's the cheapest option, and that's generally the way you want to go with beasts.
If he did take the Raptor Hatchling and now take Swamp Leech, he can play all 3 of these beasts. Yeah, the Zombies, the Devil Saw, and also both Zombies.
You maybe want to hold back one of them just because this is already a really good board he's got now, and he doesn't want to play too heavily into Psychic Scream or Shadow Vision Psychic Scream.
True. It's not like Perna is in a huge hurry to finish this game out just yet.
Right.
There's still not been a Shadow Reaper Anduin. Alexstrasza has been and gone, so the amount of damage in New Zealand's hand is limited.
Yeah, the fact that Alexstrasza has already been played and they've healed all the way back up to 27 is such a huge factor in this game. But Shadow Reaper Anduin is the one card that I think could have pulled New Zealand really back into this game. They can now start to dominate the board as much as possible, and more importantly, get that damage through to face. They are starting right now, realizing the only way they're winning this game is through the burst to face.
Double Mind Blast plus the hero powers. That is 16 damage available to Jack Attack next turn.
And so double attack, this is perfectly set up. If they go Hero Power, Holy Fire, Hero Power, that's 9, which brings their opponent down to 16, I believe. And then double Mind Blast, that's exact lethal. Which means the heal had to be found by Brazil right now, and that Life Drinker is the exact effect that they needed.
Okay. Oh, okay, but that's still fine. It can be played next turn. Okay. Holding back on the heal is probably smart because Perna knows that he's not dead this turn.
Yeah.
So allow Jack Attack to have this false sense of security. Allow him to put everything possible to the face. Then put the surprise heal down.
They're not safe, though. Not quite yet. No. Even though they have the lifesteal from the Raptor Hatchling Zombeast, there's still more Mind Blast that can be found. There's one regular Mind Blast in the deck, I believe, plus a Shadow Visions, which could get another one.
Well, there's also the lifesteal, so that actually ruins the whole plan anyway.
Well, no, I mean, you just ping it. Like, you ping off the lifesteal guy, and then if you pick up another Mind Blast, you're still delivering lethal in the next couple turns.
But the original 2-turn setup we were talking about.
Yes.
Just the existence of this lifesteal card means that is not possible.
Yeah, sorry, I was already considering the different line of play,
Primordial Drake, though, isn't looking too bad here. The Poisonous Divine Shield Direwolf
speaks to me.
Does make it a little awkward, but it allows Jack Attack to clear most of the board. The problem is, for New Zealand, it's not about just clearing the board now. They need to be dealing damage to the face. They need to be winning the game because they're not going to outvalue Deathstalker Rexar.
They're not going to outvalue Deathstalker Rexar. but they might just be able to sneak in a win. I honestly wouldn't be that surprised if they still do it. Because with the heal from the Zombieast on that turn, that's good. It gets them up to, what is that, 21, so they're only dying. They wouldn't even, it would have to be 4 Mind Blasts for them to be dying after that heal. Which means triple Mind Blast, they still survive from where they're sat. But then next turn, if you can taunt up with Primordial Drake and draw the second Mind Blast, Jack Attack has still managed to find a way to be in this game.
Brazil had 20 damage available to them there if they drop the King Crush next to the Direwolf after making the attacks.
Really? Wow, okay.
So they're actually very close to just having lethal themselves.
Maybe they do just win. So close there, man. And if they don't play this Zombieast, they will just be dying to triple Mind Blast. And I definitely imagine that they will be preventing that possibility.
I guess Jack Attack could find a second Psychic Scream now, and maybe that would...
I guess that's the out, right?
Is it even? Doesn't beat King Crush.
It beats... You don't die to King Crush right away.
Right.
Which means you could then go Psychic Scream, they King Crush you, and you draw the other copy of Mind Blast. There are still outs for New Zealand, but it has to come...
No way!
And Psychic Scream is the exact card they needed to stay in this game. How is this still going on?
New Zealand's answers are coming pretty late, but better late than never.
They need to be really cautious about whether they play this Northshire Cleric. They need to think, how bad of a spot are we in? Do we need to play around Lifesteal Rush exactly in the form of Vicious Scalehide off the Rek'Sai hero power? Because if they don't play that and draw Mind Blast, they just have exact lethal.
Shadowy thoughts.
And they are clearly discussing that exact fact right now. What does playing the Cleric actually do? What outs does that give them on the following turn, given that their opponent will it be at 18 rather than 19 health?
Well,
I honestly think you just don't play it.
I agree. It's just a question as to whether or not having this minion on the board would help deal with whatever beasts get played by Brazil next turn. But in reality, no, of course it won't. It's got one attack.
The shadows grow short.
It's not even possible for a Builder Beast to have less than 2 health. They're playing it. Ziliax! That's the punish! Or one of the punishes.
Yeah. Which means on this turn, it doesn't have to be Grizzly into Ziliax, but that's a very strong consideration. They're playing Ziliax. That is being played.
Right. I mean, you could just hero power Ziliax Terrascale Stalker. I'm not sure. I don't really think the Stalker needs to be held onto anymore.
Yeah. Oh no, wait. This is. Oh no, sorry. This is the. They've already played 1 Mind Blast, so these 2 Mind Blasts are the last ones they have left.
Oh, okay. That does explain.
Yeah, sorry.
The decision then.
And then that means that... Yeah, so this is the maximum amount of damage now that the other Holy Fire has been played. Okay. But it still works out pretty poorly for them, allowing the Aziliax to attack through.
Right, like, New Zealand still needs to find that damage as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And even then, holding back the Cleric just for an extra ping on a future turn was definitely a consideration, regardless of how many Mind Blasts have been played already.
There's the other Visions, but with all Mind Blasts having been found, that's not going to give them any more damage. There's not another Visions in the deck, so they can't go for the infinite Visions plus damage combo.
I think both hymns have been played as well.
Yeah.
There's so few cards left in Jack Attack's deck. Drake Ping doesn't look terrible here. It's a bit slow, but it does allow New Zealand to actually put something on the board and at least deal some damage to the face.
Whatever gets them there, it's going to be very, very close, because if they don't play the Primordial Drake, then they're just going to be dead to the King Crush, and I think they're coming to that same conclusion now. They have to try and whittle their opponent's health total all the way down to 16 so that they die to the double Mind Blast.
The King Crush value trade is an option here. That would mean not making a Builder Beast this turn.
They just need to be thinking, though, how do we die?
Right.
They haven't seen both Visions, so maybe they're thinking the remaining Visions could discover a Mind Blast if it was still in the deck.
Yeah, yeah.
We obviously know that not to be the case. They're saying we don't need to go for any more lifesteal. We need to go for the throat and try to close out this game as quick as possible.
It's looking like a nice setup for a 2-turn lethal. There's very little the Jack Attack can do about this. Yes, there's a Twilight Acolyte, but there's no Dragon to combo it with.
Yeah.
So it's impossible for them to get the Cabal Shadow Priest combo off next turn.
Almost out of cards.
Master Spell takes the tiniest amount of damage off the board, but still very much lethal would be available. I think Brazil might have turned this game right around into a victory.
That's it. No spells left in the deck. So Jack Attack manages to hold on for one more turn by pinging the King Crush whilst Mind Blasting the face.
But still, the ability just for lethal now with Wind Fury off of the Crackling Razormaw Zombeast. And they're going to be starting off with that, I would imagine. Even if they get some kind of plus attack here, or a Tundra Rhino there, any playable minion with that Panther is the lethal. Brazil are now 2-0 up, one game away from advancing through to the finals.
That game was absolutely incredible. It looked like New Zealand had won that game about 10 turns earlier. Brazil had no cards left in their hand. They had no threats. Everything had been destroyed by a Dustbreaker. New Zealand had a handful of these important priest cards. But again, it just goes to show the power of Deathstalker Rexar as Raze gives us a nice fist pump there. They're excited. They believe they're going through to the finals.
And I think it's worth bringing up now that while I really loved the way that early game was played from New Zealand, getting the draw, getting that Acolyte down as quick as possible, drawing through his whole deck, which led to a 9-10 card size hand for like the whole game, right up until the later stages. I think in the mid-game, there were some slight missteps with how much they could have developed onto the board. They could have gone even more aggressive, tried to close things out a little bit sooner rather than playing so reactively. And then that would have led to an early victory, which wouldn't have led to them eventually losing to Deathstalker Rexar, even though it's worth saying it had to be some pretty specific beasts there in the form of Bloatbat plus the Scalehide. A pretty insane combo, but you know, Brazil realized what their outs were and they played exactly to it.
All right, just while we take a moment to catch our breath after that incredible game of Hearthstone, I'd just like to remind everybody watching back home about the brand new Blizzard Esports app. For the very first time, you can check out all of the stats about all of the Blizzard Esports all in one place. It's very cool. I downloaded it this morning. You can check out all of the scores for the Hearthstone Global Games, for example. If you're a fan of World of Warcraft, Overwatch, StarCraft, Warcraft 3, any of the esports going on, then this is definitely an app that you want to download. And I believe in the future, I mean, again, specifically for Hearthstone, you'll be able to see results for tour stops live as the event is going on. It's a very, very cool app.
It is indeed. As you can see now in the audience, it's not only the players, the Brazilian players, who are passionate, it is also their fans. This is something that I love so much about the Brazilian community. Every single Copa America, you just see an explosion on Twitter in terms of support. When Race won his Copa America Season 1 this time, the amount of support that he got from the local community was really quite heartwarming. It just shows how tight the community is and how much they love Hearthstone.
They get a lot of support from the local community, although something Raze did say to me when I was interviewing them just before this game is that they wish they had even half of the cheers online that the USA will manage to achieve. Come on, guys, if you're watching at home, if you haven't done HGG cheer yet, give some love to some of these great teams. New Zealand, Brazil, they've both made it so far. Brazil, undefeated in the Swiss, so far undefeated in the HGG finals. Show them some love.
And I'm sure while they will be hoping to get some cheer, if they can get through to the finals of BlizzCon, that is what they have their sights set on more than anything else. And I've got to be honest, it's looking like they are going to be doing it. The next match that we have up here in this match between Brazil and New Zealand is Brazil on the Quest Rogue up against New Zealand on the Shudderwock. And while we have seen here at the finals that matchup go in the favor of Shudderwock, that's not what it tends to do.
No, things are looking real bad for New Zealand at the moment. And this is what Brazil needed, because going forward, looking some of the future matchups, last matchup of the series is Murloc Mage versus the Odd Paladin, which is an impossible matchup for the Murloc Mage. 100%, again, according to Jack Attack, who is the most confident person in this building, I think. So Brazil really did not want to get to that last game.
Yeah, I mean, even APX Void just concedes that matchup. When he sees a Paladin, he just insta-concedes. I've seen him do it a couple of times.
Could be even
like
Paladin.
Okay, when he hears, none shall concede.
Okay.
And Mage here with the kind of hand you're looking for, I suppose, in this matchup, where there's two main avenues to victory that you can go for with Shudderwock against the Quest Rogue. It's either curve out, which is the more tried and true, likely route to work out, where you go Shard, Keleseth, Acolyte of Pain, Chain Gang, whatever. You just curve out as best as you can with your minions and hope to beat them down. The other avenue to victory that you have is try and get a Shudderwock fully activated with Life Drinker, Saronite, and Grumble on like turn 9 or 10. Which is very unlikely to happen, but if you can get it, that's a much more surefire route to victory.
Engaging TC-130
To anyone that hasn't been keeping up recently, Quest Rogue did lose a very important card. Oh, not lose, but yeah, lose a very important card in the Giggling Inventor. It's been replaced by Lab Recruiter, which seems to be a staple now. But otherwise, there are so many Tech and Flex cards in Quest Rogue. Like, it's just that Stone's Bore's been put back in.
Well, yeah, it's the double Mimic Pod, double Wax Elemental. You play all the cards that sometimes were cut.
Right.
And I think Hunter Ace perfectly framed it when I was talking to him about it the other day. You just want to play 28 cards now. You don't want to play all these cards in Quest Rogue. Well, I suppose you'd like to play even less cards if possible, but they just don't really fit the core strategy. You want it to be as tight as possible in Quest Rogue.
I've got to admit, Mage has had a great start here. He got the Life Drinker, as you said. That's one part of the Shudderwock puzzle, which New Zealand are going to be frantically trying to put together. But more importantly, they have the board. They have Brazil down to 20 health. They're playing a really aggressive game here.
And as it currently stands, tempo Shudderwock, whenever it would be played, would not even, like, already it's acceptable. You don't want to play it until you've got some chain gangs on there, so it starts copying, gets you some more 6/6s. But double MCT, the Glacial Shard, and the Life Drinker as well is just a decently strong play if they have 5 or more minions on board. But obviously, they don't even have the Shudderwock in hand right now, so for the moment at least, they are going to be worrying about just still curving out as well as they possibly can. And I think what that very possibly means on this turn isn't necessarily developing onto the board with their minions. It's clearing the runway. Just a Lightning Storm on this turn to get rid of these minions, push that damage through to face. Their hand at the moment is more removal than it is minions, so you should be using that removal to make the runway clear for your minions to attack face. You don't want to trade into this Elven Minstrel at all.
Clearly a tough decision for Mage, but there you go. It's actually going to be Hex. And I guess the earlier you play the Hex in this matchup, the better. You've got to play it before the quest gets activated. It's annoying that there's now a taunt in the way, I guess, because New Zealand want to keep smoking Brazil down. Okay.
Yeah, that turn was close, and I can totally respect the line to go for Hex. Basically, anything on that turn from Mage that played Hex or Lightning Storm, I liked a lot.
This only going to allow Lucas to clear up one of these minions, and also not even get that many procs on the quest.
This does feel like a very early Sonya.
Yeah.
Because obviously you've got the frog protecting it.
That's irrelevant, really. We're past turn 5. New Zealand has Lightning Storms, Volcanoes.
Yeah.
So I should imagine that this board is just going to get stormed away, and then, yeah, go ahead, drop the Acolyte.
Keep it on the card. Yep. Definitely somewhat surprising there from Lucas. And it's not like they are now unable to complete the quest. They still have Deckhand into Youthful Brewmaster, Deckhand into Vanish, a whole bunch of ways to keep completing the quest, but it's relatively low tempo. If they're using Southsea Deckhand and not killing off a minion and then bouncing it back to hand, this does seem to me like it's a way to maybe not giving them a quick enough quest completion, or not removing the minions and quickly enough off the board.
Drink with me, friend.
It's not far off, though.
It's not far off, I suppose. Next turn, they can go
Well, they can just go Deckhand Panda now.
Yeah.
Next turn, Deckhand, complete the quest.
And I guess the fact that you get two Brewmasters on board does help this play a little bit. But now that Mage can clearly see quest completion is available next turn, I'd be very unsurprised to see another Lightning Storm on this turn, just to clear off what are going to be 4/4s next turn.
It's not amazing, though.
It's not.
It's Lightning Storm hero power is the extent of it. Do you think Volcano is a consideration? Just because the Acolyte of Pain is on the board, it clears up everything and also allows New Zealand to dig through the deck. The downside is, obviously, Volcano is much more valuable after the quest has been completed.
Yeah, it's not actually as bad as I thought it was at first glance, because if they wanted to go carrying on down the minion pressure route, obviously that would be bad.
Yeah.
If they just wanted to curve out and kill their opponent through damage. But I think they might actually have to give that up at some point soon and instead transition over to the Shudderwock route of victory, at which point drawing 3 cards off the Acolyte of Pain is really valuable.
Yeah.
And they agree. They are giving up on the route of simply killing their opponent with minions. And I think this is actually a pretty good spot by you, Falk, and a good line of reasoning to go for getting rid of the minions. Your opponent's playing 4/4s. You never win the board from here on in. Let's find that Shudderwock, which they've got.
They have. They're still lacking the Saronite Chain Gang, and they're still lacking the Grumble. These pieces are vital for Mage to get the victory with that.
Details, details, details.
Then
figure
again,
that out later.
Lucas is already down to 13 health.
Yeah.
It's not a stretch to think that the Shudderwock with a couple Life Drinkers and then just having the power on the board maybe could get the job done.
That is true, but more important, I think, for New Zealand than finding the ability to complete the to get the Shudderwock fully activated soon, is to just stay alive. I think that's more important for New Zealand because they are just dying now to these charges.
Which is ironically now where that Volcano would have come in handy. Lightning Storm isn't going to do the job like Volcano would have done. So for Mage, he can Farsight next turn, he can play Manatide Totem, start digging through the deck. I think this is the turn to do that, where he's not immediately looking dead. Ah, okay, hang on. Now Samonite's looking good.
Yeah.
But then again, without the Grumble being activated, Shudderwock on turn 9 still is not going to be winning the game.
It's not, but it means that like outs are starting to become available.
There's been a Shard played, there's been a Mind Control tech.
Yeah, a Life Drinker.
There's been an Ooze.
Has there been a Ooze?
I thought there had been.
Oh.
Because there were 2 3/3s down early. Oh no, one was Life Drinker. Yeah, ignore me.
Yeah, so it does just mean now that with the Chain Gang being played, they could even go Farsight on the following turn to find the Grumble as well. And they are definitely going to be looking to get that as quick as they possibly can.
Speaking of as quick as they possibly can, though, Lab Recruiter going to just shuffle in these South Sea deckhands. There's 2 Novice Engineers. There's an Elven Minstrel. There's a high chance that Brazil draws some more damage right now.
Yeah,
yes, there's one.
I like this line of play. I was looking somewhat at the play of just going Vanish and then double deckhand, Shadow Step deckhand, because it pushes a lot of damage through to face.
Right.
But because you're returning Chain Gangs to your opponent's hand, which make more Chain Gangs, and you start to wonder how long it truly can go on, I think I like the route where you get these as many deckhands as possible, and then you can just follow up with a Vanish in the next couple turns. Really nice play.
All right, things are looking hard for Mage here. He can play...
Yeah.
Especially with that Shadow Step.
Yeah.
Lightning Storm will deal with one of these deckhands. Potentially, Mind Control Tech will deal with another minion. Healing Rain can put him back up to 30. It is just stalling, though. Alternatively, Shudderwock. The Glacial Shard will freeze a minion. Mind Control Tech will take a minion. Then he'll heal for 3. He'll deal 3 damage. I think
Shudderwock's a bit premature.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to be the MC Tech play, potentially. Oh, Electra Storm Surge.
That's pretty big.
Plus the Lightning Storm. That's almost a board clear. It just leaves the Wax Elemental alive. It does overload New Zealand next turn, though. That's...
It overloads them for 4, which means they can still play a Grumble off the top. And I think this is a good way to start things off. Let's just see what happens with the Mind Control tech, because you want that Battle Cry in the pool of Shudderwock minions anyway.
Right. Got the weakest minion, unfortunately. Yeah. New Zealand would have loved to get the Wax Elemental from that. Are they considering not playing the Electra? It's far too risky to leave this board intact.
Overloading for 6 is really bad though, and they want to be able to go for Shudderwock next turn. But yeah, if like I see your point. If you prepare to go Shudderwock next turn, yes, you might steal a couple of minions, but you've already taken an extra 12 damage in the meanwhile, which really doesn't make it worth it. But now with this line of play, Deckhand through to face and then Vanish. It's not quite getting there, but it is an awful lot of damage that can be pushed through.
That's 2 off, right? When you consider the dagger as well. Oh, no, of course.
No.
The Wax Elemental
It's
is not a
Ziggs off.
deckhand. Yeah. So, I wonder if Valera is worth considering here.
You could very much consider it.
It's the slightly slower route, but it would allow Lucas to get a lot of damage next turn with double deckhand, prep, vanish, double deckhand.
Because their lines at the moment are either considering Valera this turn, and then you go double deckhand next turn, and then prep vanish in the next few turns, whatever. You deliver a whole bunch of combo damage. Or the slightly quicker play, I suppose, of just developing your minions immediately and then going for the vanish play on this turn.
Choose soon.
Yeah. And this does get a good amount of damage through to face. However, you are leaving your minions that little bit more vulnerable by just having them on the board. The deckhand can be cleared off by a volcano if it were to come down, but it is not currently even available, which means the only real route here for New Zealand, I guess, is to go Healing Rain Mana Tide and hope that that's enough to keep them alive.
I'm wondering about Healing Rain Mind Control tech, just so that the Shudderwock has an extra MC tech in the pool. Maybe it's just not necessary at this stage,
2 is
though.
probably enough, I think, at this point.
Yeah, the board's not going to go that wide. Again, Giggling Inventor is gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, with that being said, I believe Healing Rain Mana Tide might even be the only real play this turn. If they could preemptively set up the Hagatha so that Shudderwock could start Hagathering the board every single turn, that'd be great, but it's just not possible.
But none of this even deals with the deckhand that they have on board.
Okay.
Yeah, they come to the conclusion that they are always pressing the Healing Rain.
Yeah.
Maybe they could consider going for Hero Power and Deckhand just because it might get a taunt. Or even going with the Mind Control tech. I guess maybe they do want the extra activation in the pool.
How wide could this board possibly go, though? Oh, Mimic Pod, there are still deckhands around in the deck.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that because I would have thought they'd just be digging as quickly as they could for Grumble or Life Drinker to try and get a surprise lethal.
Glacier Shard, not going to do anything too relevant right now. In fact, Lucas, if he plays these in the hopes of setting up for lethal next turn, he just get punished by the Shudderwock.
That is true. The fact that he has another Vanish, I think, means he can be much more willing to let his opponent go wide on the board. And they are still just really hoping to find anything that can duplicate or make sure they play again these South Sea deckhands to get that damage through to face that little bit quicker. They're just wondering about how best to go about that. I like the holding back of Vanish for the moment, though, because you already have a pretty good board.
So they look like they played it there.
No, I like holding it back, because again, I think the one way that this goes wrong is if Shaman somehow manages to steal board from you.
I actually think holding back everything is great, because I'm sitting there counting Novice Engineer.
Yeah.
If a Glacier Shard gets played, that's 2 minions that get stolen by the Shudderwock, but this way, Mind Control Tech doesn't do anything. Shudderwock itself doesn't really do that much at all.
Yeah.
Hagatha Glacial Shard is a very real option now, though, and would set up for a better Shudderwock next turn.
They've come to that same conclusion. That does make me wonder if we should have seen Valera at the start of that turn, because, okay, if they're playing Mimic Pod at the start, they should have come to the conclusion already that they're never going to play any minion that they draw unless it delivers them lethal, which I don't even think there was anything they could have gotten that would have done that. So why not just play the Valera or the Hollow to set up for a better play next turn, more likely to deliver you lethal?
It does feel like Valera's been sitting there for quite a long time. I wonder if I wonder if they're afraid of playing Valera and then having the weapon removed, which would prevent all of the deckhands from being able to charge into the face.
That's a good point.
That's the only reason I can think of why they'd want to hold it back for this long.
Well, now finally, Hagatha comes down. Maybe she can deliver some magic with whatever she's got brewing in her potion. An unstable evolution. I don't know, maybe some charges could come out of that to try and pull this back. But now, with how much damage can even go through 8, and then Vanish brings it up to 12. Still no lethal available on this turn, as close as it may be getting.
Not the mana for lethal. Like, Zolaring the deckhand, replaying it, playing the Vanish would really set stuff up for later on.
I hope you like my invention.
But yeah, I like the copying of the deckhand a lot from Zola. They just need to set up a position where removal has to be used incredibly inefficiently.
But now the Shudderwock. Okay, this is going to be very random, because if Hagatha goes off first, nothing gets stolen. If something gets stolen that's got 1 health, it didn't matter anyway. If one of the 4/4s gets stolen, or 2 of the 4/4s get stolen by the Shudderwock, then things are starting to look okay for New Zealand?
I don't know. I think that Lucas, by going incredibly wide here, has really beautifully played around what Shudderwock can even do. Because even if 3 minions get stolen here, there's still a lethal potential available on the very next turn. And now it is going to have to be the Shudderwock coming down from New Zealand. Can they manage to find a victory here with these many mind control techs?
Okay, not the worst possible order, but that was pretty bad. Okay. Earthshock! Earthshock picked up from the Shudderwock. That does save them.
Because of the freeze on the face.
Amazing! It leaves Lucas 1 mana off lethal. Well, sorry, 1 damage off lethal. Shadow Step drawn. That's going to do it. Brazil have secured their place in the Hearthstone Global Games Grand Finals. They will be facing off against China to determine who is the best country in Hearthstone. And this was a spectacular series, but come on, that was a 3-0. What a phenomenal performance from that team.
Just an unbelievable display, a continuation of the dominance that Brazil have been showing all the way throughout the global games. They have lost only 1 series so far throughout the entire tournament and are just showing absolutely no signs of stopping.
I have to say to you, Derek, I'm feeling a little bit biased here. I'm just going to let it out. I want to see Brazil take this all of the way. They were one of my favorite teams coming into the finals. But again, as you said, having only lost 1 series throughout the entire tournament so far, then in the finals, not losing a single series to get to the grand final, as far as I'm concerned, they deserve it.
They absolutely do. They have just been one of the most charismatic and also one of the most hard-working teams I think we've seen here at the Global Games. The amount of preparation they put into it every single week, even with players like Perna and Race in particular flying to a lot of tour stops, going to the HCT Summer Championships for Race in particular, still finding the time, no matter what, to get that preparation in, make sure they're doing a lot of work with the preps, the picks and ban phase, which is so important in the Hearthstone Global Games. It's been a really good display, and I'm glad to see them in the finals.
Well, that is enough from us. I'm sure that you want to hear from the team themselves, so Frodan, take it away.
Thank you very much, Derek and Falcone. Brazil, you are going to the grand finals, and I want to ask you, how do you feel right now?
Very excited, very hyped, of course.
Did you expect to do as well in the bracket and through the group stage as well as you have? You guys have been crushing and have been the best performing team in HGG so far.
Before the match, we were quite shaky on these playoffs. Before we were always fine because we had some bad matches. But after pick order and ban phase, we knew that we could do it.
Do you feel like that was your edge to be able to get these 3-0 or 3-1 victories that you have been getting so far?
Yeah, practice is everything. We made a lot of pick and ban things on our Google Sheets and tried every way possible. So we always had at least one example with a very similar way they played, so that's why.
Practice makes perfect. Congratulations. And I know that the fans are really passionate. I mean, you have people who are swarming you for pictures already on the stage and they want to say hi to you. So why don't you go ahead and say one more thing to the fans here before we get ready for the grand finals?
Thank you. Your cheering was awesome. Like, gave us force, you know.
Awesome. Let's give it up for Brazil, who's going to the grand finals of the Hearthstone Global Games 2018. And with that, we have our two teams set. One from the west with Brazil, one from the east in China. What's going to happen? We'll find out when we come back to the Hearthstone Global Games live from BlizzCon 2018.